Over the past generation, California has undergone a series of political transformations. We've moved from a state divided largely along north-south lines to one divided along east-west lines, with a more liberal, democratic-leaning coastal area and more conservative suburbs. We've moved from a state that was reliably red in presidential and many statewide elections. This was a big part of the Nixon, the Reagan, even George H.W. Bush in 1988, his coalition, to a state that is now so blue that the major parties just haven't contested this in the last two presidential campaigns. Finally, we've moved from a state where the Democratic Party used to be internally divided between more conservative law and order Democrats in the Central Valley, many of whom had Oklahoma and Texas political roots, versus urban Democrats in Los Angeles and San Francisco who are much more liberal, to a state where now the internal political divide is between Republicans who are in the coastal suburbs, very often fiscal conservatives but social moderates, especially on issues like abortion, who are often clashing with Republicans in the exurbs of California, in the Central Valley and in the mountain regions, who are often tied to evangelical churches and much more socially conservative. All of these changes are interrelated, and they all have something to do with the political transformation of San Diego, which is moving from a generation ago, a reliably conservative red county, to what's now one of the state's most closely contested political battlegrounds. It may glow blue in this election, it may not. That will only be a signal of what's going on in San Diego and what in fact has occurred where we are now. This is a close city and county, whereas a generation ago it wasn't. So how's this happened in San Diego? Well, the story is about economics, about demographics, and about political change. First, many Republican voters in San Diego have moved to other parts of the state and to other states and been replaced by more liberal voters. Second, the National Republican Party has moved to the right on the ideological spectrum compared to where the remaining San Diego Republicans, a majority of them, are. So let me break these down one by one. 30 years ago, in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, much of the Republican base in San Diego was white-collar and blue-collar workers who were tied to the defense industry. Folks who made rockets and airplanes, folks who helped the nation win the Cold War, and as a reward, often lost their jobs. Many of these voters moved to Phoenix, to Las Vegas, to Fresno, to Temecula, and a lot of Republican voters either left the state or left the coastal areas of San Diego. They've been replaced largely by Latinos, who are leaning in ever-increasing numbers in California towards the Democratic Party, and by high-tech workers in the biotech industry, who are much more in the middle of the political spectrum, but especially moderate to liberal on social issues. So that's created a situation where national Republican candidates who are on the right, especially on social issues, as all of the Republican presidential nominees have been in recent years, have found San Diego tougher and tougher going on the electoral map. We've seen a lot of signs of this change. So first, in 1992, Bill Clinton actually won a plurality of votes in San Diego. That had a lot to do with Ross Perot being in the race, and it wasn't. So no Republican has won a majority in San Diego. This could be the first year that, no Democratic candidate has won a majority in San Diego. This could be the year that happens. There are a few signals of this. One is the trend in party registration, the percent of San Diegans who ally with the Democratic Party rather than the Republican Party. It's now almost even between the two parties, whereas in 2004, Democrats were about 70,000 voters behind. In the county of San Diego, the city of San Diego, Democratic registration now outstrips Republicans by about 10 percentage points. There's been a lot of changes in many of San Diego's suburbs. Del Mar now has more registered Democrats than Republicans. This is apparently the new Berkeley of San Diego, Del Mar. So this change is important, but it's not everything. Another trend is we've seen a lot more interest on the part of Democrats in this presidential race than on the part of Republicans in San Diego. So we've seen At college campus every day I see voter registration drives. The youth vote could make a difference in this election, and it's been on the rise in the last few presidential contests. The other sign is in the presidential primary this year, 70,000 more people took part in the Democratic presidential primary than the Republican presidential primary, even though both of them were up for grabs. In 2004, there were far more Republicans taking part in their primary than the Democratic primary, even though George Bush had things sewed up. So that is a big signal of change. But this race really will be decided by the nearly 1 in 4 San Diegans who aren't part of a major party. Right? 24% of San Diegans are now registered as declined state voters. They're registered with a minor party. And those are going to be the swing voters who are going to tip San Diego one way or another in this election and in the years to come. Those voters right now are trending clearly for Barack Obama in the state of California. We may see a change in this. The campaign's not over. John McCain, the risk taker, may try to jump the shark again. We may see another move like the Sarah Palin move, like the call for a suspension of the campaign. We may see another dramatic move that shifts independents into his column. If that doesn't happen, San Diego will likely go blue on a county level in this race for the first time in a generation.